Good evening, everyone. Welcome again to our Cantinho de Luis. And once again, here we are for our regular meetings in English. It happens every second Monday of the month. And tonight we have a special night, not only because we have a special guest, but also because we are in our Jorespe, this the Spiritist journey of Peabody that's been happening for 16 years. We skipped 1 year when we had COVID, so we are at Jorespe number 15. And tonight we're in the topic of Jorespe this year is how do you read it? This is a saying or a question that Jesus asks us. How do you read it? How do I read it? How do we read it? So tonight, Flávio Zanetti, which is a very good friend of ours and has been here with us since probably the beginning of the center or about the beginning. And at Jorespe, he has been with us all the years, all 15 Jorespes. He's been here with us, cheering for us, cheering with us, and talking to us, talking with us about so many different topics. And tonight he's going to talk about a guy that has a nice mustache and a very nice pince-nez, as they would call it, some glasses. So Léon Denis. But before that, we'll do an initial prayer. Then I'll invite Nancy to read a message for us. And right after that, Flávio is invited to come talk to us. So if we want to close our eyes, to raise our thoughts and open our hearts so that we can be even more connected with the forces, the powers, and the love of the universe, the one that created us, that we call by so many names, God, and so many other names. We would like to thank you for the blessings that we've been receiving our entire lives. So many times we don't even know that they are blessings. Only after some years is when we feel and when we notice how these blessings are blessings of the love in our lives. So it is with gratitude that we are here tonight, opening our minds, opening our hearts to learn how to read the universe, how to read your messages, how to read everything that you send into our lives. With this prayer of gratitude, we would like to start our meeting for tonight with love and thankfulness. So be it. So let's invite Nancy to read the message that comes from the book Green Light. Although I didn't tell her that, I think. Or I did? Okay, good. And she's going to read the message for us.
Good evening, everyone. From the book Green Light by Emmanuel and Chico Xavier, in the domain of the voice. Observe how your voice is doing, for the voice is one of the most meaningful instruments in everyone's life. Each person's voice is charged with the magnetism of their feelings. Speak in a tone that's not so loud that it's scary and not so quiet that it creates difficulties for the listener. It's always advisable to repeat patiently what has already been said, the interlocutor, when necessary, without changing the tone of your voice, understanding that not everyone has impeccable hearing. Never say phrases such as, "Are you deaf? Do you want me to shout? How many times do you want me to speak?" Or, "I've had enough of repeating that." Never say phrases like that. The voice left uncontrolled by anger, deep down, is a sort of aggression never convinces. And you will manage your verbal manifestations more safely and profitably. In any telephone call, remember that on the other end of the line is someone who needs you to be calm to maintain their own tranquility. Thank you.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. So let's continue with our thoughts. When thanks to this prayer, thanks to this beautiful message that opened up our activities tonight, importance of how we speak, the methods that we use. Let us continue with our thoughts raised and thank our benefactor, our Father and Mother God, for this opportunity that we have tonight. Opportunity which we'll be speaking, we'll be dialoguing about this amazing human being that was with us 100 plus years ago. We'd like to thank all of our benefactor spirits, all of our guardian angels. May they embrace our hearts. May they bring peace to them, as well as enlightening to our minds, so that we can really pass the message with the same dedication, with the same preparation with which we put together for you guys. So, who is Léon Denis? Has anybody read anything by Léon Denis? One hand only. Wow, okay. So, imagine if I told you the following: Spiritism wouldn't be what it is without Léon Denis. We wouldn't be probably here today, or maybe in a different setting, if it wasn't because of Léon Denis. So, the amount of work that this gentleman with the very beautiful mustache, I tried to really, put my hair the same style, right? But the mustache, to grow a mustache that nice, I couldn't do it. I apologize, right? But beautiful mustache, right? A lot of the dedication, a lot of commitment was put in place in order to write amazing books. I've just copied a few that I found online here with us in our slides, but amazing works by this gentleman. And the question that we have is how to read him, how to read his works. And this is going crazy here. So let me just try to lock the wheels. Otherwise, I'm going to trip it. Yep. I wasn't very successful. Anyways, wish me luck. How to read some of his works. How should we read Léon Denis? Léon Denis, from some, he was a philosopher, he was a humanitarian, he was someone that was contemporaneous from Allan Kardec. He met Kardec himself a couple of times. He hosted Allan Kardec in his house when Kardec was doing a tour, a visit, or going to really talk about Spiritism in the countryside of France. So, how to read Léon Denis is a question, because a lot of his books, he talks, for example, the very first one, let's do a quick, the very first one that we can see, The Invisible World and the War, Christianity and Spiritism. We have Into the Unseen, After Death, Life and Destiny, Spiritism in the Arts, The Big Enigma, Now and Hereafter, The Mystery of Joan of Arc, Socialism and Spiritism, the why of living or the why of life. So very vast amount of materials that he writes for us. This is just a sample of his works. He wrote more than 20 books. How to read Léon Denis is something that it's not easy, because you may be reading one day a book about philosophy, a book about how to interpret really spiritism, the codification, how to interpret, the spirit's book, the medium's book, how to really make sense of mediumship and all that. And sometimes you may be reading a book about arts. What's the role of spiritism in the arts? Or what's the role of spiritism in politics? In this day and age, as we know, a lot has become, politicized in our world. So I'm going to start by suggesting one phrase that Léon Denis mentioned. He says, and I quote, "Love is the heavenly attraction of souls and worlds." Heavenly attraction of souls and worlds. The divine power that connects the whole universe, as well as governs us, right? And makes us fruitful, gives us the ability to be fruitful. Love is the look of God. Do you guys see how poetic this phrase is? Do you guys see how much content is in this phrase? For example, love is the heavenly attraction. It so really brings all of us together. We may not love each other here, but we love a cause, which is Spiritism. We may all love Mackenzie and Shirley's, which we do, but that's not the only reason why we're here. We love something else greater than that. It could be the friendship, the camaraderie, it could be Spiritism, it could be the ability to serve, the ability to do something good, the ability to do some social activities, help the community. Whatever it is that we love brings us together. The same people that love the same things that we do, right? We are brought together based on love. It's what attracts us. Yeah, also the worlds that we live in. Not necessarily the universe, but different worlds, different, friendships, different communities and all that. All that is really connected by love. And the divine power, or God's power, we could say, that connects all the universe and governs them and makes all of us fruitful or productive. That is thanks to love. Love is the look of God. So if you're wondering what God looks like, this is the answer. Love is the look of God. See how poetic this is? So in order to read Léon Denis, we have to have our, poetic side really turned on. We also have to have our philosophical side turned on, because this is also very philosophical in a way that, what connects me with everything that I work with or that I like or that I, enjoy is love. I should be asking myself, what do I love? What are some of the things that I really love that really make sense for me, for my life and all that? That's what Léon Denis says. But let's take a detour, because Léon Denis also contributed, I wasn't in the picture before, he contributed to the Spiritist magazine, the magazine that Allan Kardec wrote for more than 17 years. Léon Denis contributed to that magazine. And in one of the magazines, of course, it's 150 years ago, right? There wasn't internet, there wasn't Facebook. People wrote letters. And with those letters, they asked questions for Kardec to ask the spirits so they could get answers from the Spirits magazine. And one of the questions, right, they asked about Kardec's replacement. Imagine if Kardec got hit by a bus. Sorry, that would have never happened because there were no buses back in 1800s. But imagine if something ever happened, to Kardec, who would be his successor? Would we have somebody to continue his activities, right? If something was to happen back then. That's actually a question that was put in the Spirits magazine. Kardec asks the spirits, look how we interpret the reading here. Who will succeed when I leave? Either when I pass or if something happens to me. What will become of Spiritism once no one is seen to appear in a noticeable way to take its reins? Can you tell me if my successor is already chosen? This is Allan Kardec himself asking the immortal spirits. He was curious. Hey, I'm getting old, life, it's really turning for me. And, the day that I'm no longer here, physically speaking, what will it be of Spiritism if that happens? And look what the answer of the spirits. Remember, the spirits, the good spirits at least, they never interfere in our free will, as we know. I believe you guys have read about it. There's a lot of books to talk about it. Andrew Lewis's, the Codification, Spirits book, and all that. The good spirits, they help us. They are willing to help us, but they have no authority whatsoever to interfere in our free will. Every one of us, we all have our free will. We all have the ability to drive this machine that's called, or this vehicle that's called our lives. We all have a way to really build the destination for our lives. And no spirit has the ability to interfere in our free will. Look what they answer Kardec. Yes and no. So yes, there's something already lined up for you in the case something happens to you, but it's really given to humans free will. All of us have free will. And the person could be up to the last moment, retreat before the task is assigned or complete. Imagine if somebody asks, hey, would you be able to really, become the next president of Cantinho in the future? Me? No. What are you talking about? Oh, I can't do this. The person could have said yes or no, right? So that's respecting our free will. So the spirits, imagine how much planning that has to happen for a work the size of Spiritism not to go down the drain. There's a lot of planning, a lot of work from the spirituality for that to happen. That's exactly what we hear and learn from the Spiritism magazine, which, by the way, it's a publication that's not to be read cover to cover. It's to be studied. It's to be really discussed. It should really resonate with our critical thinking in order for us to make sense of those things that we read in the Spiritism magazine. It's not a book like a novel that you sit down, you read, and it's a beautiful story, it's a romantic story, and then everything happens, it's not. It's a different way of reading. Similarly speaking, Léon Denis, I argue and I suggest, should be studied based on the amount of content that we have from his works. Let's continue. So this is a very important dialogue because Kardec is coming to a point, 1861, he's got 8-9 more years before he passes away. But he's getting to the point that it has often been said that many spirits, so here bits and pieces, the many spirits would incarnate to help the Spiritist movement. That's what Kardec is asking, right? Okay, this is what I'm seeing. I'm hearing this. I'm hearing that. I'm getting letters from these mediums here, right here. I'm getting letters from those mediums right there. Those letters are really making sense with each other. Those mediums don't know each other, so they don't have a way to talk to each other. So, this really makes sense. So, how do I make sense? Who are those spirits? He asks the immortal spirits. And then Spirit of Truth said, yeah, without a doubt, many spirits who have this mission, but each to their specialty to act. Everyone will be revealed by their works and none by any pretension of supremacy. That's why we have no hierarchy in Spiritism. Nobody's better than anybody. We're all working together. We're all contributing to the greater good. Doesn't matter what we do, right? Let's make an analogy. In the Spiritist Center, right? Whoever is talking here, my ears are the closest from my mouth. So I'm the one that needs to hear this first than everybody else, right? So another analogy, if somebody doesn't come here before and cleans the space, imagine you guys are going to come up here and keep looking, oh, look how dirty that is. Oh my God, look how that's not neat. That's not nice, right? Your attention will be distracted from the topic. So without somebody properly cleaning, tidying things up and making sure that everything is on their own places and all that, without those types of activities, the work doesn't happen. The final product of work doesn't happen, right? That's exactly what we hear from the Spiritism magazine. For all this work to happen, we need certain and different types of people contributing in different areas. One contributing more works here, one contributing more works there, one doing these types of activities, one doing those types of activities and all that. But that's one way of seeing. But if I look at, for example, Léon Denis himself, as I mentioned, Léon Denis, a little history, he came from a very humble family. He was he read a lot of books. At one point, he became a salesman. So he was selling leather. He was going city by city or town by town selling leather. And in these, journeys or in these travels or trips, every time he had a chance to stop at a bookstore, he would go and look for a book. Right? Oh, okay, interesting book. That's how he actually came to know Spiritism. But for those of us who are here, right, that we know, who was the codifier of Spiritism? Who started Spiritism? What was his name? For those folks that are following us online, because here nobody seems to know the answer, we're going to wait for you to make a comment online for us. Who created, so to speak, who put together Spiritism first, at least for our eyes? Allan Kardec, yes, exactly, Allan Kardec. But was Allan Kardec his name? Allan Kardec, right here. The answer is already there, just so you know. So was his real name Allan Kardec? No, it was a code name, right? So who remembers what was his, birth name? Nobody remembers. Oh my God. Mackenzie, do we have study groups here that these guys can go and start, learning more about it? Because there's some information that's needed here for us to continue this conversation. So his birth name was Hippolyte Léon Denis Hivail. That's his French birth name. But I'm going to ask you to maybe put some food for thought. Look at Allan Kardec's name. Hippolyte Léon Denis. Oh, Léon Denis. Is it a coincidence or a mystery? Ooh. It could be a coincidence. We don't know. But it's interesting to see that Léon Denis' name is also part of Allan Kardec's name or birth name, so to speak. Interesting, right? So, just a food for thought for us to break the ice a little bit here. So, continuing, let's talk about Jerome of Prague. Have you guys ever heard about this Jerome of Prague? Jerome of Prague was a Catholic saint, or a priest, I should say, then became a saint. And Jerome of Prague, his name is going to show up here, right? Was a revolutionary theologian. He was a reformist. What does that mean? He wasn't happy with all the injustices that the Catholic Church was doing back then. This is in the middle, 1600s and all that, right? 1400s, 1500s. So he was not happy with all those changes. So, yeah, this is not good. It doesn't make any sense. This really doesn't follow what Christ said. We're going against what Christ has taught us and all that. And he was a follower of Jan Hus. Jan Hus was another priest in the Prague region, or the Czech, region, that was really, right, a forward thinker by his time. He went against all of the sometimes craziness that the church back then used to imply on people. For example, right, back in the days, the church used to sell a piece of land on earth. On heaven. They used to quote sell a piece of land in heaven. That was a normal practice that the Catholic Church did. And this is not a criticism. By all means, we love our Catholic brothers and sisters. That's not a criticism. It's just a historical, representation of how they thought back in the days. But Jan Hus was totally against it. And the interesting thing is, if I look at Jerome of Prague, who was follower of Jan Hus, he was Léon Denis' spirit guide. He was Léon Denis' really mentor. Look at that. Look at those interesting things, how, those things seem to fall in their places. So, more mystery or coincidences. Let's look at another spirit, right? Johann Huss was, as I mentioned before, was a part of the clergy. He was a philosopher. He was a writer. He did a lot of work around the Prague area. He was a reformist as well. He fought very harsh against some of those injustices that were happening with, against, followers from the church back then, to the point that he, Jerome of Prague, became a close friend of Jan Hus. But let me take a step into a little further, right? There's a concept that we learn in Spiritism that's very important for us to make sense of all those things around us. And the concept is that this is not our only life. I believe you guys agree with me. This is just one life, or one small piece of my life overall. Or if you want to, speak analogies, who likes Netflix here? Who watches Netflix? Almost everybody, right? So imagine you pick your favorite series. Those like long series, maybe like year 12, or that goes like multiple year series. Imagine if you never watched any of the episodes, and then you turn on Netflix and you go to, let's say, year 5, episode 5. I'll give you an example. My wife loves Grey's Anatomy, right? And it's like a 15 years TV series. I mean, there's like so many episodes, right? 15 years. So imagine if I just pick up the Netflix and start watching by episode, let's say 47. Would I be able to understand the whole story? No, because so much has changed, so much has passed. That will be difficult. So in the same analogy, our life here is only one episode of our series of multiple years, of multiple existences. So when we look at ourselves now, this is the best example of ourselves. This is the best form of us. Because we've been progressing through our life, after life, after life. We've been learning, studying, correcting mistakes, right? Polishing some edges and all that. So we've been learning. So the concept that it's very important to remember is reincarnation. The fact that we can come back, not in this body, because this body is going to go, right, to become compost eventually, right? Go back to the earth in a new body. But me, myself, spirit, I'll come back into a new body, right? So the idea of reincarnation, I'll go back into a new blood, new flesh. It's a very important concept. Why? Because we have evidence that Jan Hus, as we learn here, was actually Allan Kardec in a previous life. How do we know this? This was a letter that was written. Can you guys read this? So it's written backwards by the Brazilian famous medium Divaldo Franco. It's also written in French, a language that Divaldo does not speak. This letter that was written in the 2004, in the fourth World Spiritist Congress in Paris in 2004, Léon Denis wrote through the hands of Divaldo Franco in French, the reverse order, telling us that Jan Hus was, in a previous life, Allan Kardec. So Allan Kardec was Jan Hus. Jan Hus was friends with Jerome of Prague. Jerome of Prague was also the mentor of Léon Denis. Those things are all sort of congruent to each other, right? Why do I say this? Because it's important to really take a picture that, folks, nothing happens by mistake. There's no casualty in creation. God doesn't throw dice, as Albert Einstein used to tell us, right? So does that mean that I don't have to do anything else? Everything will be done for me? No. The destiny that, some people believe, on Tuesday, Monday, 7:30, Flávio is going to be at the Cantinho de Luz talking about Léon Denis 5 years ago. I would have never imagined I'll be here this Monday. No, right? Our destiny is made upon our decisions today. The present is a gift, like a present that we all have to make a better future. But we all know, right? Some things, there's no casualty. The fact that we're here is because by one way or another, love, remember first slide, love connects everything. Love brings us together. Love of Spiritism, love of each other, love of a cause, love of being here with each other. So these spirits have been working or living the same time frame together, right? Let's look at some of the biography facts about Léon Denis. He was born from a very modest family in a village called Fug, or however that's pronounced, located in the surroundings of Tours in France, January 1st, 1846, 11 years before Spirit's book was first published. So when the very first Spirits book was published, he was only 11 years old, right? Then he read so many books. As I mentioned before, he was a sales rep and he traveled all over France, different parts of the country, even beyond France, different countries back then. And he loved reading. He had a passion for reading. He really loved reading. He could pick up any book and read, and really that book contributed to his thought process, his critical thinking, and all that, his intelligence. And he became a very serious and competent self-didactic. Self-didactic is someone that learns by him or herself. Doesn't go to school for it. That's him. He didn't go to college, no school, proper school, but he learned so much based on all the works that he's read, right? Throughout time. And it was his habit to review books with interest of those displayed in the bookstores. So, as I mentioned before, nothing happens by accident. When he was 18 years old, he was walking through a bookstore and he took a glance. Oh, look at that. Spirits book? What's that book about? What do they talk about? Spirits book? What are spirits? I have no idea. And that the title of the book caught his attention. And he picked up. And the interesting thing is, on the way back home, he couldn't wait to get home to read it. And then on the wagons and the carriages back home, he was walking and trying to make sense and read while walking. People will look at him like, what's going on? What's wrong with this guy? Right? And then when he got home, he started reading the book and he finished within a couple of days. The entire Spirits book. Right? So, if we understand more what Léon Denis was, yes, he was a philosopher because he enjoyed making sense of those books, articles, thinking about it, right? He was a medium. He had the ability to communicate with other spirits as well, discarnates. And he was, really one of the main followers of Spiritism after Kardec, passed away, alongside with Gabriel Delanne and Camille Flammarion, those two Frenchmen, by his time, they had amazing contributions to Spiritism, but in different areas. For example, right? Gabriel Delanne was an academic professor. He was a physicist, and he loved to study. He loved to publish things about physics. And Camille Flammarion here was also in the academic world. He loved talking about the astronomy and the world and the universe and all that. Some of these contributions, look, God and nature, right? God again, in front of nature, right? So all these books contributed to that Spiritism could really solidify itself in France back then, some of his works. So Kardec was really the compiler of Spiritism because Kardec didn't create Spiritism. He compiled messages. That's how we read Allan Kardec. He compiled all these messages from different mediums, from the United States, from the United Kingdom, from France, and a few others. Those mediums had no idea about themselves. They got to know, he got to know about the works those mediums were publishing, were writing. And then he would ask the Spirit of Truth or the mortal spirits if those teachings made sense. And for those that he could see a connection, he'll go and publish in the Spirits book, Medium's book, and the codification overall, right? So not only he was a potential replacement for Allan Kardec, as it's generally mentioned, but rather a great of a mission as the compiler itself. His mission was as great as Allan Kardec's mission, as we understand, because his works were amazing. And it's so very, very, people take Léon Denis for granted sometimes. There's not a lot of motivation to read Léon Denis. Yes, in the Spiritist centers, we talk a lot about Emmanuel, Andrew Lewis, and great, spirit guides. Not so often we hear, study groups on Léon Denis. Not so often we hear, hey, let's really read Léon Denis. Let's bring up the newest, book about Léon Denis and let's make a study group and all those things, right? His works or his mission overall was almost as great as Allan Kardec's mission itself, as we learn from the spirits. So, speaking of, codification, speaking of Allan Kardec, when we look at a book like this, This is exactly the book that Léon Denis got motivated to read more and to really, this book transformed his life. Let's see what he said about this book. After he read it, after he thought critically about it, what did he say about this book? I found, his words, I found in this book not only the solution, but the clear solution, complete and logical, to a universal problem. What's the universal problem that a lot of people are trying to answer? What's the universal question that a lot of people are trying to answer still this day? Where we came from, who we are, and where we're going to go next. This book tells us all those things. That's exactly what he said. The universal problem or question, I find answers here. His conviction became even stronger and more sound. The Spiritist theory dissipated my indifference and all my doubts. The Spiritist theory, or the theory behind this book, removed all his indifference and all his doubts. So, how do we read this? If I still have doubts about life in general, an issue or a challenge or a trial that I'm going through, a difficulty in my life, a difficulty with a family member, why do I look like this? Why don't I look like something else? What's going to happen when I die? Or when my body dies, but I never die, as I learn. So all these questions, here's the answer. That's exactly what Léon Denis told us about, this book overall. 1,019 questions that really open our eyes for us to see the world with a different eye, different lens, so to speak. Flávio, does that mean that if I read this book, my life is going to change? All the problems are going to go away? No, not quite. Our problems will never go away unless we ourselves make them go away. How do we make our problems go away? We change how we see them. They no longer become problems. So it's a paradoxical way of seeing life. So this book tells us or teaches us is a different way to see what our lives are all about. Am I here in this world just to win and not care about others? Is this what I'm here for? This is what I'm doing? This is my role on earth? This is my role as a human being right now? All this competition, and I don't care about anybody else. I want to win. I want to win. I don't know what's mine. Some people say that. Is this what we're here for? Is this, we see the answer. We can find the answer very clearly in this book. So let me just change gears a little bit here. Let's talk about when he first met Allan Kardec, because there's some interesting things for us to dissect or read on the first meeting per se. So, my slide works, yeah. So the first time I met Kardec was in Tours in France. As I mentioned, Kardec was doing a tour from the countryside of France, and he just passed on Tours, right? When Kardec came to give a conference, they had rented a room to welcome Kardec, to receive the conference, right? But the imperial police back then was very suspicious. What is this thing called Spiritism? What is that? And sorry, can't do it. They put a kibosh on it. They couldn't really use the audience. So it was necessary for them to meet in a friend's garden. So forget about a place like this. Let's meet in a garden somewhere, right? Under the stars. Imagine how picturesque that side was. Under the stars. They were all there. Over 300 people showed up. 300 standing tight, stepping on the plants. Imagine how messy it was, right? I'm not sure about your garden, but to feed 300 people, that could be a very big garden. And back then, right, those houses were small, places were small. There wasn't a lot of space. So people are like sardines almost, right, to wait for Kardec to speak. But he was very happy to see and hear the professor, Allan Kardec, who was seated amongst us, like in a small table, and he spoke to us about the phenomenon of obsessions. Imagine if you were in 1860s, 1864, 62, right? and you hear about the phenomenon of obsessions. A phenomenon today that's very, very little known by most people. Imagine how interesting that was. By a lot of, oh, does that mean that if this happens, it could not be me, it could be somebody else? Who is that? Who is that somebody else? What kind of connection do I have with that somebody else? Right? So when Kardec spoke about that, people are like, oh, wow. That's what made him, quote unquote, follow or be in love with Kardec's works, right? And became an apostle or a disciple. So, some life facts, because I think I love, getting to know more about authors. Oftentimes we just read the product, not where the product came from. So I love to know more about authors, where they came from, what they thought about when they wrote those books and all that. So interesting thing about Léon Denis. He ate very little meat. He had mostly water, but he still enjoyed a good cup of coffee, as I do, like most intellectuals, which I'm not, right? But I love coffee. Interesting thing about it, Léon Denis, at 35, he finds himself with diminished physical skills. His body is saying, hey, take it easy. You're working too hard. He was working 16, 18 hours a day. And he thought life in America was hard. Look at life in France, right? So, and the prospect of continuing his life alone, close to his old and sick parents. So he said, you know what? I can't get married. I got to take care of my parents. I'm in this new thing about Spiritism. I want to really dedicate my life. I'm in love with this cause, with this idea, right? And then he said, you know what? I can't get married. It's not going to work. So he gave up the idea of a partner, of a marriage, in lieu of having or working towards really broadcasting Spiritism to a lot of places. So when you look at that, right? Léon Denis and his thoughts and works really helped Spiritism overall. Then, not only he broadcasted, what we hear from Kardec's works, but he deepened Kardec's ideas. He went deeper into it. Some of his books talk about things that, arts, Spiritism in the arts. Not a lot of the content about arts are in the codification, right? He writes about it. He writes about it, Christianity and Spiritism, the differences, the similarities. They were not very easy to be pulled up from the codification overall. So he did us a favor by writing those books back then. He made sense to, hey, let me study this. For example, right? Spiritism in the Arts, Joan of Arc. He wrote a book about Joan of Arc. If you remember Joan of Arc's story, she was a teenager girl that helped France win the 100-Year War against England. And she received voices. Joan of Arc received voices that would dictate to her, hey, do this, do that. Like war strategy in order to win against England. The war that was decimating France overall. The same way that when she came back, the Catholic Church condemned her because she said that she heard those voices. And she was killed, she was buried alive. He writes a book about her story, what happens in the spiritual world. The same Catholic Church, decades or centuries later, made her a saint after burning her alive. Because they did not know any better back then. So he writes a book about that. So not only does he corroborate the ideas of Allan Kardec or the spirits that wrote about Spiritism back then, but he also deepens those ideas, right? And he is a worker of the first hours. We're a worker of the last hours here. We're taking the tail end of Spiritism, right? Meaning different places and all that. He was there. He met Kardec several times actually, right? So when you look at this, and I see, for example, right, his strong spirituality magnified the Spiritist ideas. The way he spoke, he was very articulate. He was a sales rep. He could really talk to people about buying things. He talked to them about buying, figuratively speaking, this new idea called Spiritism. He was able to do that, right? His works showed that we are beings of the universe and that we have great responsibilities, not only before ourselves, but also God. But what kind of responsibilities do we have? Well, if you have children, right? Those are the creatures, the spirits that God gave us, the trust, they entrusted us with the lives of those little ones for us to put them in the right direction. That's our responsibility. Our responsibility as parents is not to, pay for college, yeah, that's if you can, that's awesome. That's great. To give our children a house, or yeah, that's if you can, that's awesome. But our most important responsibility in front of our kids is to give them direction in life, to put them back towards the destination, the North Star, which is Jesus, which is God. That's our main responsibility. He told us that. He was very emphatic about it, even though he had no kids. He was very emphatic about he emphasized, right, about our responsibilities, not only to our own lives, but also to God overall. So when I look at overall, or over time, Léon Denis became a very famous spiritual speaker. He began to defend and clarify the philosophy in conferences, congresses, lectures, talks, workshops. He participated in 6 world spiritist congresses. 6. Each happened every 4 years. So in 24 years, he was a member of those congregations, right? So to understand his mission, what did he do for us? How to read Léon Denis is to understand that he developed spiritual studies with these books, right? He continued mediumistic research in a way that some of his books, Joan of Arc, for example, who, by the way, was his second mentor, was Jerome of Prague and Joan of Arc, which was also his mentor. He promoted the Spiritist movement in France and beyond. So he was the first marketer, right? The first Spiritist marketer that we know of, right? He deepened the moral aspect of Spiritism, Here and Hereafter. It's an amazing book. It's here, right? The original edition, 1931, almost a 100-year-old book, the very first one there in Portuguese, right? He consolidated Spiritism in the first decades of this century in a way that after Kardec passed away, things were very loose, and he brought them all together. He brought them together. Hey, guys, this is our mission. This is our direction. We got to stay on track here. We got to stay on course. He did all those things. So to read Léon Denis is to pay very close attention on what he did for us, for Spiritist movement, for Spiritism overall, and all of his contributions based on his works, based on his life, and so forth. Well, so some final remarks that I love. This is a picture when he was 79 years of age. 79 years of age, right? And back then, 79 was very advanced age. Right now, 79 is common. People should live to 79. His average, when he passed away, the average, life, the average life was 59 years old. It was 20 more years than the average time folks lived, right? Back then. Oh, I love it. That's what happens when they don't get married. You don't fight, right? No. That's what happens when you do something good to humanity. When you put your life to work towards others, right? You always get some extensions. Look at Francis Xavier, the famous Brazilian medium. Divaldo Franco, same thing, right? Mother Teresa, and there's so many. Gandhi, for example. There's so many of these folks that because they really donated their lives towards humanity, they got some extensions and lived much longer, right? But the phrase that I'd love for us to remember before we adjourn, before we wrap, is it's not enough to know and to believe. This is him philosophizing, him questioning, arguing, right? It's not enough for us to know and to believe. It's really necessary to live our beliefs. I believe this, I'm going to live it. To insert our belief system, Spiritism or whatever it is that we believe, right? Spiritism or whatnot, to insert that in our daily lives. And if those are superior principles, even better. Because once we have adopted them, our lives are going to change. He made this comment critically thinking about how folks consumed religion back in the days. Let's go back maybe 70 or 80 years ago, or more so 100 years ago. The way we consumed religion was usually every Sunday morning. What happened to our lives? We'll go into our wardrobe. We picked our best clothing, right? We will dress up because we're going to see God. So we better dress up. So we dressed up, and then we went to see, a coat or a mass or a service, any kind of meeting, religious meeting. Then that was our connection with the religion back then. But oftentimes we left that temple or that place and we went back home and we did some atrocities. We had slaves, or we beat up our women, our children, others, we killed others, and all those things. So at the same time, I lived one day, I'm Christian now, I follow Christ. And then the next day, I was almost like a totally new person or a different person. That's his critique. It's not enough to just believe something. We have to live every day. Otherwise, it won't work. Because if those are superior principles, the more we live those, the better we become. The better human beings we become. That's exactly what we hear from Jesus. Even so, faith, if it has no works, is dead, being by itself. Because if you believe something, you don't make something out of that, it's dead. That's exactly what we heard from Jesus. But we lost that. We got lost into translation in 2,000 years. Right? A lot of people that follow Jesus and follow Christ, or Christians, or right, were having that type of behavior that Léon Denis was criticizing. That no, time out, right? This is not what we should do. We should look into our lives critically. That's why he's called a philosopher, a humanitarian, someone that's really helped advance Spiritism and its moral principles, deepen the ways that people thought, studied, and consumed a belief system or a religion. Totally different. As we learned today, we are Spiritists 24 hours a day. Not just on Monday evening when we come to Cantinho. No, on Sunday morning when we go, we are Christians. No, 24 hours a day. He was adamant about this, right? Because that got lost. So many years, that got lost through all time. So, his main publications, 16, I think, are his main publications. But one thing it's important to mention, some of his books are books that he wrote. But when he was becoming blind, he learned how to what's the name of the language? Braille, yeah. The language that you just have you can touch and you can read. He learned how to put that together. So when he became blind, he had a secretary. He would dictate her his speeches and she would write it down. But when she was getting sick as well, he learned how to write Braille and he was putting all that together. So some of his books were actually his conferences, multiple hour conferences that became books. So his talks, like we're having one here, his talks became books. So for example, Progress is one of them. Experimental Tests of the Survival. Socialism and Spiritism. What are the similarities? What are the differences? It's an amazing book. Highly recommended, right? In this day and age that a lot of folks are talking about politics. Let's read it. Let's learn more about it before we just jump into conclusions, right? The Spiritism and the Catholic Clergy. There was actually a talk he did to clergymen in the Catholic seminary in France. It's an amazing book, 140 pages, very easy to read. It's an amazing book. So some of these were actually his talks that he shared his wisdom and knowledge to those that came to see him. They became books eventually. So folks, to wrap, Léon Denis, one of the most prolific writers or Spiritist writers of all time. He followed Kardec. He deepened Spiritism ideas. He went beyond even what Kardec wrote us. He was contemporary with Kardec, met him a couple of times. He dedicated his entire life, more than 60 years, 60 years dedicated to Spiritism. His contributions, we're still seeing the tip of the iceberg of his contributions, his works, his talks. I mean, there's so many things that he's contributed, that he's given to us. Hopefully, I really hope that this small compendium of knowledge about this amazing author motivates all of us to go back and pick up one of his books. Maybe watch one of the talks that are so widely available in today in YouTube or through Cantinho's channels and whatnot on Léon Denis, his works, his books, right? His, writings and all that. Hopefully, you guys have that motivation, that passion, that love to connect even stronger with this amazing author. Thank you so much for your time. And may all these benefactor spirits that have helped Léon Denis continue helping us in our own journeys ourselves. Thank you.
Ali umas coisinhas para passar aqui para vocês. Flávio, mais uma vez, não tem nem como agradecer, viu? Porque tem umas coisas que a gente precisa ouvir de outras pessoas, que a gente sabe, mas quando a gente escuta de outras pessoas, é bom a gente ouvir, que parece que quando a gente fala, a gente, sei lá, parece que a gente esquece ou não percebe, mas quando a gente ouve de outras pessoas, parece que faz mais sentido, às vezes, não sei. É engraçado. Talvez tenha um pouco a ver com aquela história do santo de casa não faz milagre, sabe? Que é você mesmo não faz milagre para você, você precisa de outra pessoa. Ajuda, é verdade, é verdade. E eu aqui tô falando em português e nem era para estar falando em português. É uma cabeça. I apologize. That's funny. I really didn't even think about it. That's how sometimes our minds plays trick on us, and maybe that's even to show how much more we need to hear other people. Because right now I was just in, I don't know, I was probably in another world, and just couldn't put the head around what you were saying, thinking about how much he did, and how many things we, like you said, we don't know, and that we have today, one of the reasons because of him, right? It's amazing. So once again, thank you for being here and for doing this for us once again. It's like I said, it's Flavio is the one that has been here with us at Jorespe every single year. So every year he was here at least once to speak to us, to talk to us. But sometimes he comes even just to watch us, to watch with us and be together. So with this, I'm gonna, Dora, do you have your camera ready there? Thank you. So every year, before I speak a little bit about the rest of Jorespe, We have a small gift, and hopefully Daniel didn't spoil it for you. He didn't? Okay, that's good. Because this year it's I told last Saturday that this gift, which is just a small souvenir for that every Jorespe we give to people. I told this last Saturday, and she raised her hand up and she said, "It was me. It was me." There were people that I invited to talk, right? And they didn't want to talk, right? And then they saw what we were going to give, and they said, "Oh, I want to talk."
Price, not a motivation.
Joking aside, let's invite. I'm going to invite Adriana. She has the gift, so maybe she will be the one to give our little souvenir, Flavio, for you for being here.
Thank you.
And you can spoil for people who are here. No one's going to talk
Thank you
about
so
it,
much.
but hopefully the ones that come after us, after you, they will not see it. So it's a surprise for them too. I hope you like it. So this is our token of gratitude, of course. You can, that's fine. So Jorespe is continuing, is going. It's going on, and tonight was the fourth topic. And so we had four already. So this was the 1st of June. Deborah came here, and I repeat these because I know that not everybody can come Mondays and Saturdays. Not everybody can watch everything, but these are all online, so you can all go back and watch if you want to, based on the topic. So this was Saturday, the 1st of June, with Deborah at Leveza de Ser Espírita. So being spirit is a very light thing. Then the next one, que pode passar aí, Marquinhos? Só embaixo, isso. Ou então na seta, no teclado. Isso. Then the second, last Monday, I was here, and then I talked about, and then he raised to read. Then
Right arrow.
yeah, no teclado, é só teclar na seta que vai. Isso, muito bem. Then Saturday, we had our dear friend from California, Daniel Assisi. He came to here to talk about the secret of the spirits, the books, the spiritist books. Then today we had Flávio. Then can you go to the next one? Pode passar o próximo? And then tonight was Flávio, with the unknown world of Léon Denis, or how to read Léon Denis, as he put it. Then the next one, which will be this Saturday now, though these ones are the ones that passed. So we have them all online, so you can go back and watch them. So now we have the ones that are still to come. So this is the dividing force. This is right at the middle of Jorespe, this next Saturday, because there have been 4, then this will be the 5th, then there will be 4 left. So this is right in the middle. And right in the middle, we have 3 big women that will come here and talk to us. So Maria, Judite, and Anna. They are sisters and the mother. They will come to talk about this lady, Alta de Souza. She's a writer. It's a Brazilian writer. She wrote one book when she was alive. Was really never, I think she was not even published when she was alive. She was published after as a book, but then she came back through Chico Xavier, and then she wrote through Chico Xavier. So many amazing poems, and there are some really good songs that people wrote using her poems, and the lyrics are awesome. So they're going to come and talk about her as an author, as an incarnated author, and as a discarnated author too. So they will They'll talk about them both. This is this Saturday at 7. Next Monday, we will have our dear friend from Cantinho, Jussara Leal. She's going to talk about a book called Paulo e Estevão, which we are studying on every Wednesday here, Wednesday night. So she's going to talk about this book being out of time. I mean, it's completely out of, doesn't matter when you read it, it will always be updated because it talks about human relationships and our deep transformations. And how do we read it? Then next, the Saturday after that, we're going to talk about another big book in Spiritism, which is Nosso Lar. Gislaine will come here and talk to us. She's from Getu, a book that shows us the way. Then we will have Luciano, which is also a worker from us, from here, from Cantinho. He's going to talk about pages of humanity written in our souls. And that's the last Monday of June, the 24th. And then we have our dear friend that came here last year for the first time, our dear Humberto Fabri. He will be here on Saturday, the 29th, talking about the gospel, which is probably one of the greatest books ever written. But he's going to talk about through the methodology of Jesus, what the gospel means through the lens of Jesus. And then those will be our next topics. So we'd like to give a big thanks to everyone that came already. You know, remember Deborah, remember Daniel and Flavio once again for being here with us for our this journey, this monthly journey that we go through, thinking about one specific topic. And this year is thinking about how do we read? How do we read the world? How do we read our situations, the problems that we face, the books that we read, the things that happen to us? How do we take those in? And what are the lessons that we take from these into our lives? So how do you read? How do we read it? I'd like to mention one thing, which is the Spiritist Symposium. We have posters on our entry door. No, that's fine. We have some posters there. So in September, we're going to have the Spiritist Symposium happening this year here in Boston, or here in Massachusetts, in Boston. And we can go online and already register. There are some discounts running at this moment. So if you register early, we get some early discounts. And it's every year it happens in a different state in the United States. This year is in Massachusetts. It happened here, I think that's about 15 years ago or 16 years ago, because I think it was right before the first Jorespe or right after the first Jorespe, something like that. And we all went there and everybody was there, and lots of workers from all the groups, Spiritist centers were there helping and doing stuff, and it was really good. And 15 years later, 16 years later, it's coming back to here. So it's been all over the country, now is back in Boston. So it is a very, very interesting and very good symposium, a very good event. It will talk about life and immortality in the perspective or philosophy of Spiritism. So it's an event that happens entirely in English, which is the goal is really to spread Spiritism in English for locals. I mean, of course, we are all invited and we should all be there so that we can, gather together. But we have to remember that it is in English, and it will not be like me, that we're supposed to stop to speak in English and started speaking in Portuguese, right? So it will not be like me. But yeah, just a reminder. And then the poster is right there, but there are some small postcards if you want to take some to remind yourselves to go online and do your own registration.
Activities for kids, children.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah. So it starts at from 4 years old and like from 4 year olds and up to my age. So everybody in between, from old people to young people can all go there. Um, and there will be activities for everybody. So, and I think that that's it for tonight. Once again, thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Can we finish, or are we still waiting for? Are we good? All right. So Adriana promised me that she would come here to do the prayer, but also but also her voice is not very good, so I'm gonna do it for her today. Yeah. So it is with joy in our hearts that are brought to us this unlimited joy of life, brought to us from our friends, from these good encounters, for these meetings that we have together with people that we like, people that we love, spirits that are here to celebrate this idea of spiritism, an idea that changes our lives. There this idea that's able to move us to different places, to move us forward, to bring our minds and our hearts up. That we would like to thank Jesus for the opportunity once more of being together, of remembering good people, of remembering great minds, reminding ourselves of wonderful hearts that came here before us to teach us, to imprint in our lives their words, their thoughts, but most importantly, their lives and their deeds. So we would like to thank Jesus for allowing them to come, for allowing people like Léon Denis to be here with us, and to instill in us the perseverance to fight our battles, to climb uphill, because we know that when we reach the hill, we will see a better future, not only for us, but for everybody, while working together with the spirits that are already discarnated, but also with all the ones that are here living with us. So, Jesus, thank you for allowing us to be a community, to be part of a community, but also to encourage us to be active in the community, of not only reading, but also practicing what we read and what we hear. So help us in our endeavors and bring us together with you so that one day when we look behind, we see that there is nobody because we are walking together side by side with you. God bless us all. So be it. And that's it. Thank you very much for everybody for coming. And we usually have the passes, but during Jorespe, because it's a little longer, we don't have the passes, but everybody was blessed already. We have some water there for everyone. Thank you, Marquinhos, for helping me there in the computer. Thank you, Flávio. Thank you, girls. Thank you, Dora. And we'll see you soon, hopefully this next Saturday.